Hello.
It's been a while since
quite a while.
Shearwater, and we're in a new location. Okay, first question.
We're rehearsing for the Loma show at the Sub Pop 30th anniversary extravaganza, which is this weekend.
Yes.
And so far, so good. But what are the questions?
Okay. Mike Jackert at El Guapo 931.
Guapo 931.
What is the day-to-day touring schedule like? How does a rockstar pack for tour? Is SWer recycled, or are there multiple versions of the performance garb?
Recycled, heavily recycled.
Heavily recycled.
Don't get too close to any of us after a couple weeks into the tour.
That's not true.
It's not entirely. Well, I remember hearing about the scientists in Antarctica talk about the Antarctic washing system, which is that you have two sets of clothes, and you wear one, you keep the other one set aside, and then when the one gets really sweaty and grimy and dirty and horrible, you switch to the other set. And then when the same thing happens to that one, you put the first one back on. and then you just keep on going. As long as everyone does this at the same time, it doesn't matter.
I kind of feel like that's just the philosophy of me for jeans.
Yeah,
in general.
Well, yeah, it's true. There's not a lot of trouser wash. I mean, we actually kind of got lucky on the last Loma tour. There were a lot more laundry opportunities than usual.
That's true.
But when you're playing every single night, you just often don't have time to like dry your clothes. In Europe, for instance, dryers are kind of an unusual item.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like you put your clothes in the wash and then you put them in the dryer, and you in the morning you go to load everything into the van and your clothes are a sodden mess, and then you regret it all the way to the next show because it's just like turns into a pile of mildew in the van. And you get this whole sort of ecosystem going. Anyway, so yeah, that's the rockstar
touring life.
Yeah, touring. Yeah.
Day-to-day touring schedule.
Oh God.
It's just the same thing over and over.
Yeah, it's kind of Groundhog Day. I mean, usually you're out of the club by like 2. And then hopefully get to wherever you're staying within like an hour of that, and so you're in bed, hopefully by 3, and then depending on how far you got to drive the next day, you're up, easily like 9 sometimes, or 10. It seems like you're always running a sleep deficit on tour after a couple of weeks. It's part of what makes tours sort of rot after. I mean, I've never done like a really like deluxe tour. Like I've never done the tour where you're in like a tour bus. And I can see there'd be problems with that too. I don't think it's, even though in my mind it's like a incredibly glamorous and like oh sort of thing, but I have a feeling I'd be like, oh, this is kind of gross in a different way, and it's really expensive.
Yeah.
But it's, I'd love to just even have like more than I'd love to play like 3 shows a week in a tour or something, and just get to sort of park somewhere for a while, but we just can't afford it.
No.
It's just too expensive. Touring is a really crazy thing to do, actually. After this last Loma tour, I sort of need to rethink how we're going to do touring, because I mean, luckily the Shearwater audience basically rescued that tour. Like, we were going to have to decide who not to pay, I mean, it was just, it were bad days, those couple of days in there where we were trying to figure out what to do. And, thank God so many, like, wonderful people.
Man, that day, that day, like, rescued some really bad days.
Yeah, it did. I mean, just like, it was the first time I've ever been on tour and been like, what is going to happen? Like, I've always just sort of like been trying to, you're just sort of like building the road in front of you as you go, and like it's always sort of worked out, and even if we make sort of a belly landing, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
I had one tour where I had to tell everybody I couldn't pay them what I owed them, but so some things like an Animal Joy tour. But eventually, after a couple of months of working on different things, I was able to find the money and pay everybody. But this time it was going to be bad. Like, we would have had to not pay the gear rental company. I mean, we'd have like really ruined some relationships. But it didn't happen.
Did not happen.
Did not happen.
Yeah,
because
luckily.
we got rescued by a lot of really, really kind people. But I think that like as far as like the small club tour of the United States and Europe, I just don't. It's hard to see how we could ever do that again.
Shearwater could do it.
Maybe. I don't know.
Because the last Shearwater tour.
Those Shearwater tours were, I mean,
It's
yeah, I
really
mean,
good.
and the difference between, like, this is sort of inside baseball stuff, but like the difference between a tour that like completely loses its shirt and a tour that does okay, sometimes it's just a matter of a couple of shows that pay a little better.
Yeah.
But since that was like a tour for like the first band, or the first tour for a new band, you know, the guarantees were just terrible, and so we went down in flames. But the shows were good. I mean, it was fun.
though.
But
Yeah.
the music was great. It was a pleasure to play.
Yeah.
What's the next? I think we've dealt with that one.
I
enough.
think so.
What's the next question?
Well, okay. My question is, do you
Yeah.
want the air conditioner on?
Oh,
Is it getting hot?
air conditioner. We're fine.
Okay.
New York's hot, but so what?
Okay. Next question is from Roooaaarrryyyyyy. It's weird. I guess Rory at Maudlin Karma.
Maudlin Karma. What was that place that we played on the Lemma tour in,
Oh,
in Maine?
yeah.
And it had something like a.
It's like the
A hopeless message of bitter despair was like, or bitter message of hopeless grief.
Yeah.
That was another one. So
That's really
I was surprised.
funny.
Like, why is this so funny?
That was a very strange
A
place.
bitter message of hopeless grief. It was a funny show that night. Did we blow the PA? Something funny happened to the PA.
Oh, it was. No, Jess did something weird.
Oh,
Like
right.
they cut out in their set.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
There was something weird before that.
Well,
Anyway, does Jan still read behind the merch table before the show starts?
I don't know. I don't know if I'll do that again. Sometimes. I'm not opposed to doing that again.
Did you sit there and read?
Maybe I did. I
Okay.
don't know.
All right. Well, there you go.
Maybe.
Martin Alesky.
Martin.
What was it about Bowie's album Lodger specifically that made you want to cover it very well? And are there any other albums you love to cover?
Well, there's going to be some more information about something related to that soon, but I can't tell you right now. But for Lodger, I just always really liked Lodger since Thor introduced me to it, and it's like, dude, it's this great weird David Bowie album, and I sort of like, I mean, like a lot of classic things, you kind of forget to listen to them because it's like, oh, it's a classic album,
Mm-hmm.
and but I didn't really know much about Bowie at the time, other than sort of the most famous stuff, and I just loved how weird that record was, and that he hadn't played a lot of the songs from it live, and it just sort of seemed like a challenge in a way, and since a lot of music that was made around 1979, 1980 was kind of an inspiration for Jet Plane. I thought it would be fun to cover the Bowie record from 1979. So we started, like, even in rehearsals beforehand, like, I figured we'd just cover like one song at a time and we'd eventually build up to the whole record. But then, and we've told the story before, I guess, but then he died like while we were rehearsing. So it suddenly became this like, gosh, should we do this? And then, but it sounded really good what we were doing, so I was like, well, I think it's appropriate to do this, and people really liked it. I think we only played it in full like 2 or 3 times.
3?
3.
I think Brooklyn, Chicago.
Yeah, we did like a standalone thing at Rough Trade in Brooklyn, and then Chicago, and then Seattle, right?
Seattle, and the Onion.
Oh, and the Onion,
So
right?
4.
So we did Chicago, and then Chicago again the next day.
Yeah.
And that was those were long shows. So
Oh my
it
God.
was like getting into Springsteen territory on those shows. But most of the people didn't leave. Like, we gave them the option at the end. Did we take a break? I can't remember if we took like a little intermission.
No, we
just
didn't.
kept on
we
going.
just kept. Well, I mean, it was our encore.
Okay, well, 45-minute encore of its entire David Bowie record. Yeah, it was fun. I liked this show.
That was really fun. Let's see, Jenna.